everybody, and welcome to Conversations with Codey, where we talk to experts from around the world on digital safety. I'm very proud to introduce our first speaker today, which is Oluwatosin Olabode, a certified digital wellness educator, TEDx speaker, and author of Digitally Well, as well as several other books. Olu works passionately to teach people the importance of digital wellness and balancing their screen lives, as we teach our young adventurers how important it is to balance their time when they go on a screen. Olu, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Wonderful. Please tell me, Olu, why is digital wellness so important?
Yeah, so we live in a world now where there's hardly anything that we want to do that doesn't require a form of technology or the other. This then means that we're spending a lot of time in the digital world. Digital wellness is therefore important because if we are not protecting our well-being in the digital space, it will have an impact on our physical lives. Health essentially overviews our emotional, our physical, and our mental well-being. And the World Health Organization will rightly say that there is no health without mental health. And if you break down mental health, it simply overviews how we think, how we feel, and how we respond to life's situations. You will agree with me that the digital space affects how we think, it affects how we feel, it affects how we
Influences
react and
everything.
respond to life's situation. So digital wellness, which is the idea of how we build balance between an offline and online world, is super important because it helps us live well, not just in the digital space, but in our physical lives also.
Fantastic. And tell me, in your opinion, how are children affected when they spend too much time online?
Yeah, so I like the idea that the question is asking when they spend too much time, when they spend excessive time online, depending on the age of the child and the journey of the parents. It's okay to expose them to some form of technology, to some form of screen time. But once it becomes excessive, it becomes a problem because one of the things that I can think of at the top of my head is that children don't have regulators. So it's like the way you have a newspaper and there's a cue to end reading the newspaper at the end of the page. Even we as adults, when we are scrolling on social media, it's difficult for us to take a pause because there is no regulator that tells us to stop. How much more children, especially when they are watching cartoons or games that they love, there's nothing in their brain telling them to take a break. And so they can have physical consequences from excessive views, which can cause eye strain, body posture. They can also have mental health effects from anxiety, from the just the pressure of what that digital space provides. Because again, the digital space in itself isn't regulated, and a lot of times parents aren't monitoring what they are giving their children access to, and so there can be anxiety that comes up from the kind of content that these children gain access to. There's also the cognitive perspective also, because children are still developing, their brains are still developing. Overstimulation can also lead to attention span. It can lead to them getting distracted more easily because you're exposing them to a world that they are not matured to yet.
And these products are developed to keep the children online because there are businesses,
Exactly.
right? So it
Exactly.
releases those dopamines, so they feel like they're playing, but they're actually not really playing. Real play
Yeah.
is physical play with other children, and even boredom breeds creativity. And we really feel like our children need to be bored every now and then.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I love most about one of your platforms, which is Adventures with Codey, one of the things that I love much about going through that course is the idea of play. You know, that's comparison between pressing play and the actual play in the real world. It's super important. And I think this is the conversations that parents need to begin to have. Are my children playing in the physical world, or am I giving them excessive screen time to just play? Because the consequences are conversations that they are not having, even though this impact is being seen in the lives of their children.
And once something is seen, it cannot be unseen, which takes me to some of the other risks that our children could face when they spend too much time online or they go unprepared to the digital world. Could you take us through some of the other possible risks?
So one of the risks that I love talking about the most, which I don't see a lot of people hosting conversations about, is confusion.
Oh,
The
nice.
reason why I say the reason why I say confusion is because values are very important to us as human beings. And as a family, as a parent, as a caregiver, there are certain values that you've given to your children. Now, if you don't prepare them for the digital space, the values they will see there are totally different from the values that you've raised them with. And so one of the biggest challenges that I see in teenagers, that I see in children getting into the digital space unprepared, is that confusion from, but this is not the way it's supposed to be. There's something in them that is telling them this is not right, but there isn't, again, a filter that tells them, okay, it's not right, go back and tell your parents, okay, it's not right, log off from that site. Because that filter isn't there, they just end up within that space confused. The second is access to inappropriate
Mm,
content, because they are not prepared. Again, the kinds of platforms, because when parents prepare their children for the digital space, they're able to monitor and guide them through the kind of platforms and organizations they should be relating with. But because children are unprepared, their access is limitless, and the digital space is limitless. There's
mm.
access to almost every information
So
that
easy to
you
get
can
lost.
look for. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. Not preparing your children for the digital space gives room for them to access inappropriate content. And then online predators also.
Oh,
Again, because children do not have regulator, they don't know any better. And so a lot of people might just, there are lots of predators online. There are lots of them just looking for whose child or whose children to
mm.
exploit. And so if you do not prepare your children, they might have access to these online predators. And one of the things that is super important for me in all of this conversation, especially, as you know, when we talk about children, is that we have to create a safe space that children can come back and tell their parents or their caregivers what is happening with their digital time. Because a lot of times when these online predators target children, they don't go back to tell their caregivers, they don't go back to tell
They're
their
too
parents. They
scared.
just try to figure it out on their own. And a lot of times they fall prey because they are not developed enough to be able to know the accurate solutions to tackle it. And then cyberbullying.
Oh,
Cyberbullying is another challenge that children face when they go online unprepared. That is essentially harassment. It could be emotional, it could be psychological. It's endless. It's
and it
it's
can
it's
change
endless,
their
and
future forever because it takes away their
exactly.
confidence. They don't know if it's real or not. It's a
Yeah,
real
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
And
And a lot of times, yeah.
that prefrontal cortex, that little machine in our brain that tells us to quickly make a smart decision based on the pros and cons, that is only fully developed in your 20s. And here we have
Yeah,
a bunch of children that are sitting on social media or going to sites that they shouldn't be looking at. They don't have the ability to make that quick decision to go, actually, this is wrong. We shouldn't click on this,
yeah,
shouldn't send that picture. They don't know any better. They're a little bit impulsive. So
yeah,
very interesting. Thank you so much, Olu. Tell me, in
yeah.
your opinion, is it possible for parents and educators to manage their time online? And how would you suggest that they go about doing that?
Yeah, so I'll look at it from two perspectives very quickly.
Mm,
One perspective talks about the things that parents can do directly that involves the children. And all the solutions that I'm going to be offering requires having conversations with your children. It's not enough to tell them what to do. They need to know why. The importance of them knowing why is that when you're not there, because the why is solid, they can hold on to it. They know that this thing is not right because of A, B, and C, in comparison with when they just feel this thing is not right and there is no context to it. The first is that parents can download monitoring tools to help
100%.
to help engage the children and to help ensure that they are in line with the values of the home, with the values and morals that are ideal for their proper upbringing. Second is introducing them gradually to friendly browsers, to friendly sites. It's super, super important. It's super, super important. Another conversations that I usually tell parents again is there's no one size fits all.
Mm,
Ideally, your child under 3, under 4 shouldn't have access to screen. There's enough play time. There are millions of different types of play that you can engage your child with. But from the ages of 5 thereabouts, I'm of the opinion that depending on the journey that the parents want to take their child, we're in a tech world, we can't run away from it. You can gradually begin to introduce them to some forms of technology. And so one of the ways that parents can do that is to be intentional in finding friendly sites that they can engage these children Two. And then the third is having boundaries and having holistic
100%.
boundaries, that you are having intentional conversations with your children about helping them understand why these boundaries exist and the reasons why the boundaries does exist. The second perspective is the things that parents can do on their own. One thing that I know a lot of children learn from what they see you do, even more than what they hear you say. And so once parents begin to model healthy lifestyles, healthy
Ah,
digital
there's the
lifestyles,
rub.
it becomes easier for their children also to model those lifestyles. And the three key principles that I teach in terms of healthy modeling lifestyle is intentionality, scheduling, and the law of traction. Intentionality is not just telling your children when we are having dinner, you shouldn't be pressing your phone. And then parents are pressing their phone. You're not modeling
You
that
gotta
right.
lead by
Um,
example.
do you understand? You're not modeling that right. The second is scheduling, setting a time. So parents understand that they need to work, their work require a form of technology. Once you explain that to your child, and then you schedule for no tech zones, I like to call them no gadget hangouts. You schedule for times where you're not using technology. It becomes easier for your children to relate. Okay, so I need to use technology for my assignments, but once I'm done with that and it's time for bonding, all iPads, all technology need to be dropped away. Once children see parents do that, it becomes easier for them to navigate. And then the
Then that
third one is
creates
the
a
law of
habit
traction.
as they get
Yeah, it
older.
creates a
It
habit.
becomes like
Yeah,
no, normal for them, and we're not all stuck
yeah,
into our screens. We love that. We
yeah,
promote
yeah. It becomes
the
a lifestyle.
Yeah, it does. It has to
Yeah,
become a lifestyle because, as you said,
yeah,
technology is not going anywhere. And what we try to teach our adventurers is that they have a circle of trust around them. And whether they are people or organizations, that circle of trust is there to protect them. And it's good to speak up. One of the strongest tools our children have is their voice. And if they're scared to
yeah,
share what they're experiencing or what they're doing, they're worried that technology will be taken away. By agreeing
yeah.
up front, we totally agree with that. Almost like a technology agreement. They can understand what the rules are, but we as parents need to stick by those rules.
Yeah. And one thing I want to add to what you just said, again, goes back to one of the resources that you have, which is Adventures with Codey. Ideally, again, when introducing your children to technology, when introducing them to social media, when introducing them to the digital space, essentially, because the digital space is outside of your control, because the digital space is a borderless society of endless possibilities, you don't just throw your children into that space. You have to properly teach them how to navigate that space. It's the same principle we do with when we want to drive cars. You can put your child in the car when he's 5, when he's 6, when he's 7, but he's not at the driver's seat. The parent is at the driver's seat until he becomes of age. And then he first has to go to a
And he's
driving school
watching you
to
as well while
learn.
you're driving. So he's
Exactly,
learning.
watching while you drive. Exactly. And then when he becomes of age to be able to drive, he still has to go to driving schools because again, once you get to the road, it's not enough for you to be a good driver. There are other drivers on the road. There are other people that are outside of your control. It's not enough for a parent to have given the child the perfect values, the perfect morals. The digital space is filled with other children that might not necessarily have those values, that might not necessarily have those morals. And so one of the key things that you must do is introduce them to courses like Adventures with Codey that take them step by step on the principles, on the guides, on what you need to know about privacy. We were talking about online predators earlier on. All an adult needs to do is pretend to be a child and then tells the child, "Oh, I'm giving you access to this. I'm showing you pictures of my house. You too show me pictures of your house." And children are easily gullible because again, their brains are not fully developed yet. But with resources like the materials that your platform puts out there, it teaches these children, okay, so these are the do's, these are the don'ts, this is why this isn't okay, this is why this is okay. So that when the child finds themselves online, is no longer in that space without information. When he sees something that is wrong, he's like, oh, I learned this with conversations with Codey. Let me have a conversation with my parents with it. And so
Yes.
I think that is also super, super important when parents decide on their own that they want to be intentional with ensuring that they are protecting their children online.
I love that analogy, Olu. Thank you so much. I think that is it's as clear as day when you put it like that. I mean, we do not advocate that any children under 13, in fact, we would prefer 16, even go into the social media space. And I think a lot of parents don't understand how dangerous that space is because, like you said, share with me a picture of your house. You just think about it. You don't think about it, you just do it. But by going through an adventure and somebody saying to you, it's not good to do that, it'll make them kind of think before they click, which is what our whole
Yeah.
intention is. And I think some adults could also learn some of those lessons from them. In your
Yeah.
experience, Olu, what are some of the common misconceptions about digital wellness? And how do you go about breaking those misconceptions in your work?
Yeah, so I think the misconceptions about digital wellness comes from a lack of awareness or a full understanding of what digital wellness is to begin with. A lot of times when people hear digital wellness, they think digital detox, which is an extreme but needed solution in certain cases. There are
Mm.
certain situations where you just need to shut off social media, you just need to shut off some forms of technology and all of that. But digital wellness is not digital detox. Digital detox is one of
And
the
that's a once off.
terminologies and one of the methods that we share when talking about digital wellness. And I think that's why a lot of people get scared. They think digital wellness is an anti-tech movement, like we both agreed on and we've mentioned in this conversation. We're in the tech world, it's ever
It's not
evolving.
going
Like there won't
anywhere.
be a time it's not going anywhere.
Mm.
And so digital wellness is saying that how can we in this tech saturated world, how can we stay productive while protecting our overall health and well-being? I think once we begin to have that understanding, the misconceptions about digital wellness will go down, because the top misunderstanding for me and in my interactions with people is
Mm.
that idea that digital wellness is pushing people away from technology or is telling them no technologies. For instance, how we both agree that under 13s shouldn't be on social media. The conversation isn't that they should never be on social media.
No,
It's just that because of what we've seen via research and experiences, under 13 shouldn't be on that space. But once they've graduated past 13, once they are becoming full teenagers and all of that, they can begin to gradually get into this space. Even in getting into the space, again, you don't jump into all of the social media.
Mhm.
You gradually pick one. You have an intention with why you're joining it, and you're able to achieve it. So I think one of the solutions, especially when I deal with clients, is to make them understand what digital wellness actually is, and they can begin to see the benefits therein.
And tell me, Olu, what do you think is the missing link between parents giving their children smartphones and children using the smartphones?
So for me, the biggest link, the biggest missing link is one, and it's the why of it.
The why
The
of it.
most important, the why of it, the most important factor that can help build a healthy ecosystem between parents and their children is understanding the why of why they need those devices. I've seen a lot of parents give their children devices as a medium of escape. So the child is always on my neck, the child is distracting, the child is not allowing me to do my work. And so I get him a device that distracts him. Now, because there isn't a solid why to why, or because the why of giving that child a device is to keep him away from you, you will not bother on what the child is doing with the device, because your intention has been achieved. Let this child not bother me. In as much as the child is not bothering you, whether the device is helpful or harmful to the child is not a problem to you. But if the reason why you are giving your child access to technology is for, let's say, educational purpose, is for entertainment, is for even business, some children or some young adults are beginning to get into the coding space, into the
Mhm.
tech space, and all of that. So for
A lot of
whatever reason,
homework
in as
done.
much as it is, yeah, in as much as the reason is genuine, because you had an intention, you will be there to monitor to ensure that you are achieving that intention for your child. And so for me, the missing link that I've seen between parents giving their children device and how those children use those devices is the why of it. The second part of that is also the conversations that we are not having with these children. A lot of parents are just, don't do this. A lot of parents are just, drop your phone. A lot of parents are just, no screen time, without an explanation, without a why to it also. And so the child is left confused. You are telling me not to have screen time, but you're not giving me context to it. You don't necessarily have to explain everything, because the child might not, depending on their age also, they might not necessarily fully capture it, but you have to be able to give context so that the child understands that, oh, the reason why I really love that illustration in Adventures with Cody. The reason why I am not pressing play and I would rather go play outside with my siblings is because it's more realistic. It's
Mm.
more, it's more sustainable. It's more empathetic. It's more real. Like once they have that context, it makes sense for them to drop their phones. And it's actually more fun when you try
Mm,
it. The only challenge we have is that a lot of children haven't played outside. It's from one game to the other, one game to the
mm,
other. So it seems like, what would I do outside? But once you begin to try it, you see the results there. And so
mm,
for me, it's the why of it, and then not giving a context to your wife for whatever reason. Those are the two, I think, top links, missing
mm.
links in how I see parents giving their children devices and then how the children use the devices.
Alia, I couldn't agree more. And whatever happened to us just saying no, or go play, or color in a book, or go do something else, build a tower. There's so
So
many
much
other
options.
things. And we are advocates of boredom breeds creativity. When I
Yeah,
tell, I mean,
yeah,
I'm a little bit older, but my mom used to laugh at me when I said I was bored, so you learn to stop saying I'm bored.
yeah,
And she'd
yeah.
make you do chores around the house. Oh, Olu, I can't thank you enough for sharing your insights, your expertise, and we really look forward to chatting more with you, Olu. All the best with your book. We will be promoting it as best we can, and you're fantastic in the work you do. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you so much for having me, and really glad to be here. Awesome
Fantastic,
conversation.
Olu. Thanks, everybody. Keep watching for the next conversation with Codey.